Welcome to Every Friday with Dan and Olivia. I'm Dan Miles.
And I'm Olivia Darbo.
And my topic for today is misunderstandings. We all experience them. Some of them we can laugh about. Some of them we may deeply regret. But I think it's a relatable topic. I've got a few specific ones I'm going to run down, and we'll see if they trigger any memories of similar experiences in your own life. I mean, we were talking about driving an episode or two ago. And, you know, I pulled up to a four-way stop one time at roughly the same moment as another driver. And, you know, I was going straight. He was on my right. He was going to turn right in the same direction as me. We made eye contact, and, like, we nodded and waved at each other. And then we both went, you know?
Yeah.
And we almost collided because in my mind, my little wave meant, thanks for letting me go. And his wave meant, you're welcome. But in his mind, my wave meant, I'm giving you permission for you to go. And if you think about it, the thank you and your welcome wave are going to look exactly the same.
Yeah.
You know, and of course the classic is the thing where, you know, someone smiles and waves to you and you smile and wave back and then you realize they're waving at someone standing behind you.
Yes.
You know, everybody goes through that. Back in the days of these things called fax machines, I was typing up a fax transmittal and I was starting to write, thank you for your assistance. And I was doing that. I was interrupted by the phone or someone was at the door. So I took care of that. I came back and I saw I had written, thank you for your ass. That's the exact spot in the word. So that wasn't really a misunderstanding. It was kind of nipped in the bud by proofreading. But
Nipped in the butt.
Nipped in the butt. Imagine if I had sent it out that way. Because you think, I was doing a transmittal. That's done. And you send it, thank you for your ass.
Yes.
One time, I'll do a few of these and I'm sure you'll think of things. One time my parents were staying with me. And I pointed out this set of 3 light switches. And I started to explain what they did. And instead of listening to me, they're like, we know how to operate light switches, you know, for crying out loud. Give us some credit. Go to work. Okay. So I go to work. I get home. My mother says, your TV doesn't work. Your cable's out. I go, really? You see these 3 light switches? The one in the middle switches off the cable. My guess is you guys did that. This is if you would have took 10 seconds to listen to me explain it, you know, maybe the next time we have visitors in the house to listen to old Dan tell them.
Yes.
I can understand, though, how someone would be like, you're going to tell me how to work the light switch, really? But on the other hand, give me some credit. I'm not going to point it out if it just turns the lights on and off. Well, one time we had a rash of solicitors at my office.
I'm sorry. I just am noticing.
What?
You're talking about pointing out as you're pointing again with your left hand.
I'm not pointing at you.
But you're very expressive, almost Italian today with your hands.
My pointing radius this time is within my own personal space.
Right.
I was pointing at my laptop.
I see.
Yes, I was.
Yeah.
And let's see.
Very Bob Fosse.
I'll do two or more of these, and then we'll get. I'm sure that it'll make you think of things. I had one where we had this rash of solicitors walking into our space. You know, just walking in, soliciting things. So I wanted to put up a no soliciting sign, and I bought one. And I was waiting to hear back from the property management company for their permission, you know, to stick it on the door for signage. So I just taped it up there, you know, temporarily. And there was this work crew, these 3 or 4 young guys working next door. And I saw they came up and saw this. And like they started like looking into the suite and laughing because they probably assumed I was like too dumb to install the sign correctly. Obviously it has an adhesive back, but it was like taped up there with Scotch tape. Like, oh, look at that dumb guy in there. He doesn't know how to apply it. Well, they don't know the context. I'm waiting to hear if I have permission to do it. So, you know, that's kind of an annoying misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Again, at my expense. Let me know as I back my hand towards myself. I'm
no worries, Dan.
I made a promise not to invade your space with my hand.
No, it's
that
okay.
Terrible.
It's just there's something so black and magical about those gloves. You know, if there was some day glow thing affiliated with them and we were in the dark,
they do have.
I feel like they would.
They do have
be
copper,
leading me somewhere.
They have copper circles on them. Each finger.
They're really quite ornate. Yes. For black gloves. They almost look like they could be going in the jewelry direction.
Yes, well, they are therapeutic. They're not
But that's
cosmetic.
What's so interesting.
Yeah.
I've actually seen musicians who have a pinky. I don't want to digress off our topics of misunderstandings.
Please do.
But I think it falls under the category of misunderstandings because people could be like, oh, yeah, they've said to people who've had like a pinky that's been out of whack and there's been a ring specifically made for a finger that's out of whack. And people said, oh, that's such a cool ring. And really the purpose that the ring is serving is to keep the joint in place. So I guess that would be considered a misunderstanding, or somebody possibly saying that they really thought you had really cool gloves and you're actually they're my therapeutic gloves. That's also a misunderstanding.
Yeah, that's true. See, we're just littered with them. Now everybody's going to become very self-aware and self-conscious of all these misunderstandings. As I said, some are harmless, some are harmful. We'll get into that a little later, but this is kind of a funny one. I was at a restaurant in Phoenix. It was in the lobby of a hotel. I was there with my sons and my wife. And
Are you still married?
I'm not, no.
But you still call her your wife. Is that a misunderstanding? There we go.
At the time of the story, she was my wife, not my ex-wife.
Okay.
So for the purposes of the story, I was there with my sons and my wife.
Right. The child of my mother's child.
I'm guessing this was 2011.
Children's mother.
Yes.
2011.
My children and their mother, correct. And I have to include her in the story because she figures into it. So I was at this hotel lobby restaurant, and somehow a comment came up about the bartender possibly being gay, and she said, everybody in here is gay. And I was a bit taken aback by that. She said all the waitresses were gay. Most of the other customers were gay. This had all flown right by me. Okay, so either later that day or possibly the next day, I Googled the phrase Phoenix Gay Hotel. And sure enough, that place pops up as being gay-owned, gay-friendly, etc. But now, in terms of misunderstandings, imagine you enter the story at the point where I'm typing Phoenix Gay Hotel with no knowledge of the backstory I just gave you. Mm-hmm. I mean, what would you assume about me? Oh, hey, meet this guy. What did he just type? Phoenix Gay Hotel. Well,
I see it like a Bethel whorehouse for Texas in Phoenix for men.
Right.
With maybe a male kind of Dolly Parton looking dude who's, got something, the male equivalent of what she's well known for, her assets.
That's interesting because maybe a female would interpret it differently. A guy would say, okay, that guy just typed the word gay. I don't need to know anything else. That guy's gay.
Right.
But my point was I had a specific reason for doing it because we had just been at a hotel that I was told that was in Phoenix that I was told was gay operated. I was just seeing, is that true or was that just her imagination? She was right. But my point is, if you catch something in progress, we were having a discussion, Tom and Fran, a little earlier today about something that happened in Canada where someone was elbowed and the initial reaction to it was, oh, what a terrible guy. Then you find out if somebody's blocking someone's path. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that was my point on that one. But this is, I'm pulling my hand back like a coiled snake.
Right, yes.
I'm not going to strike.
No.
This is an audio presentation. I don't know how that's going to go over with everybody. But, it's kind of similar to that when Paula Brewer and I were working on that Peter Sellers collage for you, there was a period of time where I had a fair amount of pictures of you on my laptop for consideration for that project. So imagine if you just walk up, look at my laptop, and there's like 50 pictures of you or more, and you're like,
yes.
Hey, Dan, obsessed with me much? You know what I mean?
Right. Is that on your computer? Are you reading that off of your computer right now, or is that just something that came to mind?
I wrote it down, and I was on the fence about if I'd say it out loud.
Oh, okay.
but as I was working on that, I was thinking about it. Why didn't she just say this, and she doesn't know I'm making this picture for her?
Yeah.
And she says, oh, Dan's collecting pictures.
So that would be considered a misunderstanding if I had seen that.
If you had seen it and not... Well, how could you have known it was for an art project? You wouldn't have known that. I
wouldn't have known, especially since you were at that point in time trying to keep it as a surprise.
That's true. And also, on the other hand, though, we do have visual promotion for podcasts and albums and stuff. So
yes.
I'll say this. When you were on my music podcast, I also had a collection of photos. You and I discussed it quite a bit.
Yeah.
What to put in the gallery for my website. So I guess in your case, it'd be different. But if just some random person finds a photo... shrine to themselves any place.
Yes,
you're gonna be taken aback.
It could be a little awkward.
Yeah, I know it could be. I'm gonna do one or two more. This one I knew that as a topic. This is kind of like it's really just a list of misunderstandings. But
okay.
One of the funnier ones though. This dates back to the Atlanta Olympics. People from New Mexico were calling to order tickets by phone, and operators were telling them they couldn't sell them to them because they weren't allowed to ship tickets outside the country. They'd say, but I'm in New Mexico. And they go, New Mexico, Old Mexico, doesn't matter. We don't ship international. The people on the phone didn't know there was a state called New Mexico. Okay. And
I lived in New Mexico.
Exactly.
But I mean, that being said, my parents just stumbled upon it because they were being English and coming to the States and wanting to, discover parts of America, or just go to parts of the world that they hadn't been to, and because Mexico was fairly new to America, and they got to the airport couldn't get on a flight to Mexico. And then they saw New Mexico up on the prompter. And so then they just, it was the late 70s. And so they thought, why not? Go to New Mexico. And I think probably still assumed it was part of Mexico. But yeah, I think that's a misunderstanding about New Mexico is, I think a lot of people who haven't heard of it just assume it's just a newer part of Mexico. And I guess for the most part, in certain regards, it is because it's still very Mexican influenced. However, it's not traditionally Mexican, it's actually Spaniard.
But of course we have a New England and nobody thinks it's really England.
Yeah, and then a lot of people don't know that a lot of areas in New York, those names have actually come from parts of
New York, New Jersey, New Hampshire.
Yes, exactly.
Because there's a York, a Jersey, and a Hampshire.
Yeah.
I'm just saying is that if your job is to sell tickets to the Olympics, you should probably at least know the 50 states. And
Would be a good idea.
And you guys came here from another country, but in this country, that's the kind of thing you learn very early.
You do.
But I'm just saying it's a little embarrassing for them to refuse to sell tickets to people in New Mexico because they've considered it a foreign country.
Yes.
That was less about a misunderstanding and more about geographical ignorance.
Yeah, actually finishing high school possibly.
But I did know that you had that connection to New Mexico. But of course, I heard the story dating back to the Atlanta Olympics, which is long before I knew you.
Yes.
I got some really short ones, but I got kind of a lot. Well, here's one. I was in the grocery store and I saw a sign for some frozen food. It said Hunan beef on it. But just for a split second, I thought it said human beef.
Oh, my God.
Because the print was kind of small. Human beef.
Yes, yes.
And since we're talking about misunderstandings, every single episode of Three's Company,
yes,
pretty much based on a misunderstanding, typically of a rather risque nature.
Exactly.
And
Seinfeld too. A lot of really well executed comedy shows keep a very simple objective or storyline so that they can and just make it as silly as as possible.
Definitely true. A lot of shows did it, but on Three's Company, how many times did Don Knotts or Norman Fell in the other room listening, taking everything the wrong way? They're installing a shower curtain or something, but everything sounds sexual.
Yeah, exactly.
And the whole point is they just go there making these faces and everybody's laughing at the reaction.
Don Knotts is just kind of going crazy in there.
Oh, Jack. Tripper.
I just love Don Knotts. I mean, there's just nobody like him. I mean, like Marty Feldman, they're just such one-offs.
So unique and so funny.
And they're just the popping eyes that just look like they look like cartoon characters to me.
And good at playing to his strengths, knowing what his thing is.
And then literally they shake when they are acting.
I just did a facial Don Knotts impersonation, judging from the laugh as I lift my hand but don't point it. Maybe we should make this it's funny, Tom and I talked about this. I met my friend Chris, who's a podcaster in Nashville, and we were speaking about this show and my other show, and he said, you ought to think about doing that on TV or doing, it's that kind of thing. And I said, well, I don't know, maybe someday. And Tom goes, yeah, if you do that, the first thing they're going to do is get rid of you, meaning me.
Oh my gosh. Tom said that?
Yeah.
It's not Tom at 20 yet. That was my phone, guys, just in case you're wondering. It was not an ice cream truck. It was not the siren. It was my phone. I was wondering
because it's 14:54. It's a crime against podcasting to bring Tom in prior to 20. Mm-hmm. But he will be brought in.
But so Tom, who said that they would get rid of you?
Well, the guy with Tom's point, which is probably pretty accurate, is if we took the show to a visual format, they'd be like, get rid of the guy and keep Olivia. And he's probably right.
Well, it wouldn't be a show without both of us. So that's a mute point.
We'd like to think that, but then they'd offer you a big bunch of money and they'd bring in Johnny Depp or something. You'd be like, nice knowing you, Dan.
No, I'm so loyal, it's not even to be believed.
Well, likewise. Well, let me tell you this story, which is a misunderstanding, but of a different nature. Last October, I took my kids to Party City to get them Halloween costumes.
Party City.
That's it. A little commercial for them. Now we've got a finger of fudge in Party City.
Yeah.
We're on the payroll. I took them to get them Halloween costumes. Zachary and I, my older boy, were looking at costumes, and Jackson wandered off. And I saw him moving pretty fast, in the opposite direction. I was on top of it. I'm always kind of aware where they are, particularly in a crowded place. I'm pretty clued into that. But I told Zachary just to stay where he was, and I went chasing after Jackson. I was getting kind of annoyed because he's moving pretty fast. He just about reached the end of the store. He was starting to turn around, and I was ready to scold him for running off. But when he turned around, I saw he was crying because he wasn't trying to run away. He was trying to find me because he lost track of where I was. And it's probably because he's used to looking up to see me. But the way the costumes were, I was probably crouched down looking at something with Zach. So Jackson turned around. He didn't see where I was, and he kind of panicked, and, he ran off. And, that was a little bit more of an intense misunderstanding because, I'm about ready to tell him, don't run. Oh, you're looking for me. Complete. Oh.
There's a siren.
It's the parent police telling me I did bad. Because the way they did it was they had all the different costumes on the wall and numbered.
Yes.
And then you go in there, tell them your kid's size, and I want number 35, and they bring you Kylo Ren or whatever. And so I was kind of kid height, and I'm guessing Jackson turned around, oh, where's my dad? And ran off. So that kind of misunderstanding. I was mad at him, and then I realized,
Yeah.
And then, on the topic of getting lost in translation, I think we've all seen examples of hotel and restaurant signs that were poorly translated.
Yes.
There's whole lists of them that come out. Sometimes you get a cheap, harmless laugh out of that, like when instead of saying crab cakes, it says crap cakes, and stuff like that. There's a million of them where usually they seems like a lot of times they're in Asia, where someone's trying to translate into English and they've just made a mess of it. But the misunderstandings I've been speaking about, human beef and can I go in the car? Sometimes the stakes and consequences are much higher. There's some famous examples of this. After victory in Europe, all the Allied leaders, Truman, Churchill, Stalin, Chiang Kai-shek, they called for Japan's unconditional surrender in Potsdam, hoping to avoid a land invasion of Japan and, all the slaughter that would follow. So the Japanese response, the prime minister didn't want to say anything. Eventually he said a word, mokusatsu, and unfortunately it was a poor choice of words. The way he intended it and the way it was translated, he was trying to kind of say no comment, or we're still talking about it, we don't have a comment. But the way it was translated to the world was not worthy of comment, F you, And really that the Allies, particularly in America, were tired of Japanese kamikaze spirit. They took the word as an insult, a rejection of peace, and it resulted in the dropping of the atomic bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And linguists dubbed that the world's most tragic translation, because they weren't saying we won't surrender. They're just saying, we're still talking about it.
Yeah, it's something that it brings to my attention, based on misunderstandings. There's little misunderstandings like the human beef and the things that you've mentioned. And then there's things that cross over into major worldwide misunderstandings, where I think you have to then take the initiative to say one can never assume.
And these people are paid to and also it was so important. It's a country and war. Get a second opinion.
Yeah, no, I mean, so I'm all about second opinions, especially when it, just basically when it comes to your health or, things that are going to cost you a considerable amount of money, just things that are important. It's always good because you'll always be surprised at, especially if that other person knows you're getting a second opinion.
Yes.
Do you know what I'm saying? It certainly changes the scenario.
Yet another similar thing was in 1956, Khrushchev made this comment that was translated as "we will bury you." But what he was actually trying to say was more along the lines of, if you guys want to be capitalists instead of communists, it's your funeral, which is more passive, hey, you don't want to think like we do, it's your funeral, we will bury you. Not quite the same meaning, further escalating the Cold War. Now, I did that episode where I talked about what if there was only one language in the world instead of multiple. Well,
I remember that well.
Yeah, so it's kind of like maybe a lot of Japanese people wouldn't have got bombed and maybe wouldn't have obviously you can't look at it that way, but my point is, if everybody spoke the same language, they would have known what everybody meant because there wasn't quote unquote lost in translation. I got another one of those, which you may remember because it's the 1950s again, but it is England. Does the name Derek Bentley ring a bell?
No.
It's okay if it doesn't. He was a 19-year-old involved in a burglary with a 16-year-old accomplice named Christopher Craig. They'd been apprehended by the police. Christopher had a gun, and he was in a standoff with the police, and Derek yelled out, "Let him have it." Okay? And so Christopher shot the policeman dead. So the issue is when he said, "Let him have it," did he mean shoot him or let him have the gun?
That's a huge misunderstanding. That's just a mistake. I don't even think that falls under the category of it. First of all, you could ask all kinds of questions like, what class system was the person from? Because if he was sort of a Cockney's lot, let him have it,
Even then, I don't know which one he means.
But let him, but you're talking, but there was there an actual specific choice that he could have made in actually handing
Here's
something
the problem. He was
over?
found guilty of mentally aiding the murder of the constable because he was seen to as if he encouraged the guy to shoot. And obviously his defense was probably, no. I said, you have a gun, let him have it. You know, you're asking for your gun, let him have the gun. But he said, let him have it.
Yes.
You know, He didn't say let him have the gun. He said, let him have it. So Derek was hung. He was hanged because at the time that was the sentence. I mean, you know, a cop was killed and you got to go, and he's 19.
Yeah,
so
that's so unfortunate.
Yeah, those are some examples of costly misunderstandings. Now, those are, you know, kind of more famous ones. I have a more personal one. I knew a guy in Sacramento. His name was Bob. He was born October 12th, 1914, because he had talked one time about how his birthday was 10/12/14 and showed me his driver's license.
Yeah.
He was serving in Korea, and he and another soldier were told to execute some prisoners, which they did. And then later, the commanding officer's like, well, where are those prisoners? And he says, you said to execute them. He said, no, I said we want to interrogate them. Somehow, there was some kind of, I don't know if the guy misspoke and said the word wrong, or if they heard the word wrong, or it was a slip of the tongue, where you say something and you think you said something else, as people have probably witnessed us do on this show. But I could tell that still haunted him all those years later, that, you know, he'd executed these guys who may not have been guilty of anything. Take them over there, we're going to interrogate them later. And somehow they got the idea in their head that they needed to be executed. So 23, closer than lately, but now it's time for
Tom at 20.
Anything coming to mind, Thomas?
So I'm meant to be following the Hiroshima story and the guy getting shot.
What do you got for us, Tom?
Yeah.
Don't bring the energy down.
Don't choke, don't choke, don't choke, don't choke.
No, I mean...
I'm going to take a page from your book, Dan, which is apparently when in doubt, make a list.
Okay.
And let's see. First of all, misunderstandings. Can we all just get over the pointing thing, like now?
Yeah.
Okay. Because, you know...
By which you mean don't point or don't comment when someone points.
I mean, like...
It's retarded.
It was a misunderstanding. It's okay. Okay, just being meta there. All right.
Okay.
So bringing it back down. Also, you know, it's weird. I can't think of too many examples from my own life of this. It's like if you brought in my girlfriend, I'm sure you'd get a much better response because countless times where it's like, it's always on me. I've misheard something or whatever.
Yeah.
And because these situations are so embarrassing, I edit them out later so I can still continue to live on this planet. Yeah, but...
Well, I will say in your defense, and you can carry on, but this is almost a kind of topic where it would have been beneficial for me to give you guys pre-notice instead of popping it off. It's just the style of the show is just whip one out. But if you have a chance to think about it, it's the kind of thing where I was hoping that my examples would remind you of other things.
Of course, I know it's all on my side of the table. It's all me just going, I just don't think, and it's what it is because any misunderstandings that I've been involved in have almost certainly been me being the misunderstanding one, right? Hey, I'm pointing at myself. Yeah. And
breaking his own rule about the pointing.
Breaking the law.
We don't need no. And so
point me at the sky and let it fly.
Yes.
Got to get Pink Floyd in every episode.
It's always me, and so therefore I'm not necessarily inclined to remember it.
Right.
Yeah.
But you know what? I found an area in which this happens a lot lately, even more than in verbal altercations, is texting.
God, you hit the nail on the head. So many things can be implied, unnecessary. Just taken the wrong way.
Yeah.
It's dangerous. Actually, I think it's dangerous to. It's very dangerous.
If I recall correctly, there actually is a website called damnyouautocorrect.com or something along those lines. And yeah, it's just
and how many times when I'm trying to type sorry has it said dirty?
Really?
Yeah. I'm dirty sorry. I'm dirty sorry. I'm so dirty sorry.
The most recent example I had was doing something about band practice and something about vocals, and it came out as hovels. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I don't know why that's bad necessarily. I mean,
I've learned to turn that off. Sometimes on your computer, you can go into Utilities keyboard. And you can turn off autocorrect across the computer. I was going to do that as a sort of public service because once I did that, it made my life much easier. Because my son's name is Jackson, and I always changed it to Jason. I go, I know my own kid's name. Stop telling me I'm spelling it wrong.
But at a certain point, if you keep doing it,
It's supposed to learn it.
It will learn. My autocorrect recognizes the word spoony, which I'm quite proud of.
Mine knows how to spell bright up. My guest earlier today, Don Brightup.
Fantastic. And then, of course, there are cliches like the joke about the monk who found he had a misprint in his Bible, and it said celebrate. So there's that. But, other than that, no, I suddenly find myself with very little to say, and yet here I have been blabbing on for the last few minutes. So
You've done fine. You pointed out the texting thing, which was great, and you brought up the misunderstanding he's talking about, in case anybody missed the episode is. The one with the Beach Boys song. We were listening to the song. Olivia and I were talking. She was making some good points. And I said, why don't you save that for the show? And she came on and told everybody that I told her to shut up, which was an interesting interpretation.
And your point is?
My point is that was a misunderstanding.
Well...
Oh, my point.
No, you missed your cue at your point.
Yeah. My points.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, I think, look, they misunderstanding. It's just there's so many varied examples of how they kind of come about, But I think ultimately the thing that's positive to come to is both people or parties, or even if it's more than two particular people participating in the misunderstanding, that you acknowledge that that's what it was, rather than getting into the blame game of, but I'm sure that you said, because sometimes based on circumstantially what's going on in your life on that particular day, and both people are maybe distracted, and we just assume, and I use that word again, which, I guess in more serious scenarios, like an agent said to me once, never assume. We were talking about something as random as hair changes. She's like, you had a lot of hair changes in that movie. And I said, well, I play a hairdresser. She's like, just FYI, it's really difficult to follow a performance when you're like looking at all the hair changes. And I said, well, I just assumed that, the hairdresser who was doing my hair was kind of tapping into the character. She's like, never assume. And I just, and it sort of stuck with me, I guess, because it permeated into my choices to do with my work from that point on.
Well, sort of, but I mean...
but I thought it was a misunderstanding. I mean, was that a misunderstanding?
Well, ironically, it's a misunderstanding on her part. You'd think that, she's a professional. She should know that it's not really your call what your hair looks like in a movie, right? I mean, they tell you to show up and they...
No, yeah, but I guess she was trying to what she was insinuating or implying to me, I felt, was to be more in control of the choices that I make and work hard and fight more as an actor to put my foot down when there's things that are going to distract an audience. Because she was distracted. Now, that whole subject matter could be merely subjective to any point, any different person, right?
And it's hard for a professional performer and a professional agent to really know what an audience thinks.
Yes.
They might have thought it was cool and it benefited the film.
I mean, she wore wigs. I remember this character I played called Tracy, and she's a hairdresser, and she's like, one scene you look like Liza Minnelli, and then the next scene you're a blonde, and the next scene you're a redhead. I mean, what's going on? I was like, you're such a chameleon, but I didn't know it was you, and I wanted to know. I was like, where's Olivia? I was like, well, I was in all those scenes. Yeah. Maybe that's a compliment.
Well, it worked for that show Alias. Alias, she had a different wig every week, and some of them were pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
So Jennifer Garner series. And we worked for David Bowie. Eric Clapton had every hairstyle imaginable too. So
yeah.
I have one more I can share before we go to the musical selection, which is, and this isn't mine, but it's too good a story not to share. Which is that we had a guest on the Spoon once, and she was out on a date with as a younger woman. She was out on a date with a younger man, and her mom got wind of this date. The young man's name was Robert Paul Anderson.
Oh.
And somehow her mom got it in her head that she was going out tonight with the robber, Paul Anderson. That sounds like a joke. It's not a joke. This actually happened.
It's those damn people with the three names. Just two names should be good enough. It should be adequate.
Yes.
Sarah Jessica
what
Parker.
What is the...
Oh, Gilbert Godfrey did a whole routine about that. He just took all the ones everybody knows, and he just... what's the Buffy? Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Yeah.
He just everybody who's known by three names. He just did one of his voices, and he did Sarah Michelle Gellar.
That's actually a good one. You can add that to your train, like Laurie, Peter Laurie. Yes.
You've got to hide.
Yeah, you need to do more impressions on this show, Don. We need to get you out of your comfort zone there with the impressions.
So if you want to hear the full story there, that's The Spoon. Go to thespoonradio.com and get over episode 47, Take the Furry Across the Wooder, and have a good time with that.
Well, as you said, we're getting close. Kick the furry. We're getting close to the music. I'm going to read you guys 4 quotes about misunderstandings. Here's the first one. The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. George Bernard Shaw.
Oh, that's pretty profound.
We're all islands shouting lies to each other across seas of misunderstanding. Rudyard Kipling. Those are a little bit pessimistic to me, but here's one. The most important thing in communication is hearing what isn't being said. The art of reading between the lines is a lifelong quest of the wise. And here's the one I like the best. Not to understand something is better than misunderstanding it. That's the one I think is pretty profound. You know, it's almost better to say you don't understand something than pretend you do when you really don't or get it wrong.
Because maybe that's why misunderstandings happen.
Don't get it all. Don't get it at all is better than get
the great maligned virtue of being able to admit you don't know something.
Right.
I'm sorry, but I have no idea what you're talking about.
And neither do I.
For you.
Exactly.
Okay, well
done.
with music and taking misunderstandings to the lighter side, something we can all relate to as music fans is misunderstanding lyrics. It's so common that they made a 365-day desk calendars out of them, so you know they can think of 365. Excuse Me While I Kiss This Guy from Purple Haze is a common one. Elton John's Benny and the Jets with She's Got Electric Boobs, which is electric boots. And honestly, when you played Hard Day's Night on your Mother tribute, there's a line in there, but why on earth should I moan? And I until I saw it in writing, I thought it's like, so why I love to come home, or so there was something else I always thought it was, and I really, he is saying, so why on earth should I moan? It's not an expression I've ever really used. But
what about rolled up like a deuce?
Well, that's a common one too.
Revved
up like a deuce, wrapped up like a douche. It is. It's like Bruce Springsteen wrote "Revved Up Like a Deuce" talking about cars, and in the Man for Man song, everybody thought he was saying "wrapped up like a douche."
Right.
That's another.
But then I think another thing to bring into this, and this is the last thing that I'll say, is I think that I've always tended to find that people, and I'm myself included, only hear what they want to hear.
Oh yes.
And sometimes misunderstandings can come about because, you know what I'm saying, you're not actually taking in at that particular, maybe you're not as open to kind of getting an aerial perspective of everything. You're just only hearing what you want to hear. Sometimes that's also the cause of arguments, because one person's speaking Chinese, the other person speaking Russian, and then you hear them say back to you what you think they thought that you just said, and it's irrecognizable. You're like, those words didn't come out of my mouth.
Yeah. That's a great point, the space between people.
Yes.
Because sometimes you hear what you want to hear, but sometimes you hear what you expect to hear. And you expect them to say, no, I don't want to do it. And they say yes, and you go out and you walk off because you thought they said no, just because you assumed they would say no. You know what I mean?
Oh, I see.
Yeah,
yes,
so your expectations filter out what you hear, and you don't really listen because you think something's going to happen. Well, interesting topic, I guess. It was one giant bagel, though. It wasn't a bunch of mini ones. It was mini bagels it was mini bites out of the same bagel.
Yeah.
So for my closing song, I had one that I was considering using, but I changed my mind. I changed my mind.
We had our ups and downs, but I always retrospect when the things you say would shift direction when put into action. But I just let it whiz on by. People say hell be it's going alright, and I flip on say that's not right. Now I see my shit's not tight, and I change my mind. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I changed my mind. Yeah, I've changed my mind. I've changed my mind. I've changed my mind. Yeah, I've changed my mind. Well, looking back now as a young man, girl, in hindsight I regret I never listened to my better judgment, so my blind side got the best of me. But we live and learn what you did in turn. Make me never ever settle for less than what I deserve. And once you mature, girl, you always be second best. I changed my mind. Yeah, I changed my mind. I changed my mind. I changed my mind. Yeah, I changed my mind. Hey, well, I really can't say I completely blame my naivete, cause it was situations in retrospect when the things you say would shift direction when put into action. But I just let it whiz on by. People say hell be it's going around, and I flip on them, say that's not right. Now I see my shit's not tight. It really pains me to see things change, but your limitations would have held me back. The things you say try to underrate me, they were just a reflection of your self-respect. But now I let it whiz on by. You can't tell me hell me can't fly. Kiss my wings, you can't hypnotize me. Hear the M singer singing this bye-bye. I changed my mind about this here relationship that you become so complacent with. I changed my mind. You sacrificed everything you had for half the price. Changed my mind, plain and simple. Now tame and gentle, girl. Changed my mind. I tried, I kept it quiet, but now why the hell you wanna go and advertise? Changed my mind. Changed my mind.
Lyrics Born and the Poets of Rhythm.
I was completely digging that track.
Yeah, it's kind of got it only changes chords like once, but
Everything about it.
Yeah.
Who's the drummer on it? I mean, aside from the lead singer who love him.
yeah, his voice is cool. Lyrics Born does a lot of rapping, but he'll sing too. And I like not only his singing voice and his sort of groove he gets, but actually the lyrics are similar to what a rapper would do, as opposed to. But also, yeah, the rhythm section on that was cool, and I like the arrangement where there's really no concern about how many times to do anything. It almost seems like the James Brown thing where you change on a head nod. Somebody kind of says, change back now, okay.
It was reminding me of Vinnie Colaiuta.
Oh yeah, Vinny's good.
Vinny does that all the time. He just, he just totally just whatever he feels.
Well, the story there is I did have a song I wanted to do, and I decided not to do it, and I changed my mind. And when I thought I changed my mind, I thought, well, there's a song called I Changed My Mind. I'll just play that.
Yeah.
And that's what I did.
So, speaking of misunderstandings really quick, did I hear you correctly just now? The guy's name is Lyrics?
Lyrics Born. Lyrics.
Do you think that's the sort of nickname he gave himself, or
all rappers give them
no one's born with the name Lyrics.
Lyrics born. Okay, we have
I'm just saying.
we have Wikipedia.
Nobody.
His name is probably like Calvin or something. Let's find out.
So in the meantime, as we were talking about misheard lyrics
Right.
earlier.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, Lyrics born's name is Tsutomu Shimura.
Is he?
Here's Lyrics born.
Go find out that Sotomu means.
Oh wow! I would never imagine him to look like that.
Lyrics born, aka Tom Shimura.
There you go.
I see.
Tom, there you go. Tom, you're Tom. He's
But don't
Tom.
you think
We
that's a
should have
more
known,
interesting name?
Lyrics born is a point to Tom
I do, but
Shimura.
I can totally see. I can totally see a
see it.
well-meaning agent saying, "No.
Exactly.
Well,
Never fit on a marquee, love."
he was born in Tokyo in 1972.
Could just wow, because that's amazing to me because his voice just completely. I always love that when people's voices don't match their faces.
Well, check this out. He originally went by Asia born.
Oh, okay.
And he
Okay.
changed
Good
it to
thing he
Lyrics
changed the
born.
name.
Technically, in Japan, he was Tsutomu. He went, well, I'll make that Tom, because the letters T-O-M are in there.
Yeah.
Tom Shimura. And then he became Asia born. Then he became Lyrics born. But yeah, it's. I have a few recordings, and I honestly didn't know any of the information I just gave you guys.
Wow, but you've actually met him.
There was a misunderstanding. I thought he was an African-American dude, and
Yeah,
it turns
yeah.
out that song wasn't supposed to relate to misunderstandings, and here we are.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I was either going to use Genesis Misunderstanding or that song, Please Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood.
Oh, right, yeah.
Right.
They get now.
Which could have been the closer, but hey, we don't be too on the nose.
No, you never do.
Well, hey, I think there was minimal pointing. There was a minimal telling people to shut up. I think we've kind of transcended beyond all that. So let's, without any misunderstanding, let's tell everybody goodbye. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Once, I was on a camping trip, and I got separated from my party. And then I was looking around, it was getting cold and dark, and I looked, and there was a giant sign that said, "Warning, you have entered the land of the three-name people." I was about to turn and run when Sarah Michelle Gellar came out and said, "This is the land of the three-name people. How many names do you have?" And then Jennifer Love Hewitt came out and said, "This is the land of the three-name people. How many names do you have?" And I said, "I have but two names." And then Ray Dawn Chang and Olivia Newton-John came out screaming, "Death to the two-name boy!" And I started to run away when Sarah Jessica Parker, Mary Louise Parker, and Julia Louis-Dreyfus came out screaming, "Death to the two-name boy!" And then Edward James Olmos, Harry Dean Stanton, Billy Bob Thornton, James Earl Jones, and Charles Nelson Riley came out screaming, "Death to the two-name boy!" And then Mark Paul Gosselaar, Tiffany Amber Thiessen, and Brian Austin Green came out and grabbed me and said, "Death to the two-name boy!" And then a group of Gentiles came out and said, "Is this death to the Jew-name boy?" And I said, "No, two-name." And they said, "Oh, sorry for interrupting." And they just... And then Michael Clark Duncan, Neil Patrick Harris, David Ogden Steers, David Allen Greer, and David Hyde Pierce came out screaming, "Death to the two-name boy!" And then just about everyone who has ever been a cast member on The Cosby Show came out. And then Lee Van Cleef, Lee Taylor Young, Jennifer Jason Lee, Cheryl Lee Ralph, Roscoe Lee Brown, Gina Lee Nolan, Rachel Lee Cook, Johnny Lee Miller, Tommy Lee Jones, Ricky Lee Jones, Jamie Lee Curtis, and David Lee Roth. And I pulled myself away, and I ran and ran and ran. So you did a lot of running. No, I ran and ran. So you did quite a bit. No, I ran for days and days and days. So, what, a week? No, I ran, and then I collapsed. And when I woke up, a girl was leaning over me, and I said, "What is thy name, young wench?" And she said, "Madonna." And I said, "You only have one name? I have two." And at that point, Prince came out, and Sade, and Vanity, and Apollonia, and Brandy, and Topol, and Cher, and Contafloss, and Fabian, and Tiffany, and Charo, and Twiggy, and Liberace, and Jewel, and Sting. And they said, in the land of the one-named boy, the two-named boy shall rule. And we danced and celebrated. And then I collapsed, because it was a pretty long week, all in all. And when I woke up, leaning over me was Michael J. Fox, George C. Scott, David E. Kelly, Mary J. Blige, E.G. Marshall, C. Thomas Howell, M. Emmett Walsh, G.T. Walsh, Lee J. Cobb, James L. Brooks, G.D. Spradlin, Edward G. Robinson, S.J. Perlman, H.G. Wells, John C. Riley, E.F. Hutton, J.P. Morgan, and Samuel L. Jackson, screaming, "Death to the man without the pretentious initials!"